Jack Harper stood at the entrance of the new Galactic Academy, his duffel bag slung casually over one shoulder. He squinted at the floating holographic sign that welcomed new students in 47 different languages. The human translation read, "Welcome to the Galactic Academy, where knowledge transcends evolution." Below it, someone had scrawled in what appeared to be digital graffiti, "Deathworlders use rear entrance." "Charming," Jack muttered, stepping through the main doors anyway. The atrium buzzed with activity as hundreds of species from across the galaxy oriented themselves. Floating platforms carried jellyfish-like creatures through the air. Six-limbed arthropods skittered along the walls, beings composed entirely of what looked like living crystal hummed in harmonious communication. And then there was Jack. Just a regular human from Earth, well, regular by human standards. Which meant he was from a Class 12 death planet where everything from the microbes to the weather could kill you. And to the rest of the galaxy, that made him walking death. A hovering drone approached, scanning him with a blue light. Species, human. Class, Deathworlder 12. Quarantine protocols assessed and waived per Galactic Accords, Section 43.2. The drone's voice became distinctly frostier. Please refrain from sudden movements, loud vocalizations, and displays of strength or speed. Follow recommended Deathworlder guidelines at all times. Jack sighed. Yeah, I'll try not to accidentally murder anyone by sneezing. The drone did not appear to appreciate his humor. Room assignment level 4, Block H, Suite 12. Your roommate has been specially trained in Deathworlder safety protocols. Please proceed. As he walked through the corridors, other students gave him a wide berth. Some changed direction entirely. A few of the braver ones stole curious glances when they thought he wasn't looking. Jack had expected this. Humans had only been allowed to attend the academy for 3 years, though ever since Earth had surprised everyone by developing faster-than-light travel independently and essentially gate-crashing the galactic community. Suite 12 was modest but comfortable. The door slid open at his approach, revealing a common area with 2 separate sleeping chambers. One side was clearly meant for him, reinforced furniture, simple utilitarian design, and what appeared to be an emergency containment field generator, subtly built into ceiling. Hello? Came a trembling voice from behind the other bedroom door. Is that the human? Yeah, it's the human, Jack replied, keeping his voice deliberately soft. Jack Harper. You can come out. I promise I don't bite. The door slid open a crack, and a single oversized eye peered out. That is, statistically inaccurate. Human dental records indicate biting is well within your capability range. Jack dropped his bag and flopped onto the couch, which creaked alarmingly under his weight. It's a figure of speech. I'm not going to hurt you. The door opened further, revealing a slender being with pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent. 4 arms emerged from a torso topped by a bulbous head with that single, unblinking eye. The alien wore what appeared to be the standard Academy uniform, but also sported what Jack recognized as personal protective equipment, a reinforced collar, thick gloves, and a small respirator. I am Krill'xor, the alien said, keeping precisely the maximum safe distance recommended for Deathworlder interaction. I have been studying Earth biology for 1 standard cycle in preparation for rooming with a human. I can recite all 17 warning signs of human aggression and have memorized the emergency protocols. That's reassuring, Jack said, trying not to laugh. Look, how about we just treat each other like normal people? I'm here to study comparative xenobiology, not to rampage through the academy. Krill'xor's eye widened even further, which Jack hadn't thought possible. You study biology? With those hands? He pointed to Jack's fingers. Designed by evolution for tearing flesh? Jack looked down at his perfectly ordinary hands. I use them mostly for video games and making sandwiches, but sure. Over the next hour, Jack tried to explain Earth culture to his new roommate, while Krill'xor gradually moved a few centimeters closer, curiosity slowly overcoming fear. Jack learned that Krill'xor came from Teros IV, a low-gravity world with minimal seasonal variation and virtually no predators. The concept of a world where the weather itself could kill you was beyond comprehension to the alien. And you say humans actually go outside during these storms for recreation? Krill'xor asked incredulously. Some do. They're called storm chasers. Your species chases death? Krill'xor's translator seemed to glitch momentarily in shock. Jack shrugged. Sometimes death chases us back. It's a whole thing. A chime sounded throughout the dormitory block, signaling orientation would begin soon. As they prepared to leave, Jack grabbed his standard-issue tablet and noticed a message already waiting for him. Mandatory? All Class 10 Deathworlders must report to Dean Vox Nera for special orientation briefing before joining General Assembly. Great, Jack muttered. More safety protocols. The Dean has strong opinions about your kind, Krill'xor said quietly, two of his four hands fidgeting nervously. Perhaps it would be best if you were very compliant. Jack raised an eyebrow. My kind? Unpredictable species, Krill'xor clarified quickly. Those not evolved for civilized environmental parameters. Right, Jack said, heading for the door, because evolution totally plans for civility. The Academy's amphitheater could have easily seated 10,000 students, though only about 3,000 were present for this orientation cycle. Jack slipped into a seat in the back row after his special briefing. With Dean Vox Nera, which had essentially been 15 minutes of thinly veiled threats about what would happen if Jack displayed any Deathworlder tendencies. Krill'xor spotted him, and after a moment's hesitation, moved to sit nearby, though still maintaining a careful buffer zone. How was your meeting with the Dean? He whispered. Enlightening, Jack replied dryly. Apparently I'm one loud noise away from being tranquilized and shipped home in a containment pod. Before Krill'xor could respond, the lights dimmed, and a being floated onto the central platform. Professor Gleeblox was an impressive sight, a massive gelatinous entity that glowed with bioluminescent patterns that shifted as they spoke. Their voice resonated through the chamber without the need for amplification. Welcome, seekers of knowledge, to the new Galactic Academy's 457th cycle. The professor's body pulsed with bright colors as applause and various species-specific appreciation sounds filled the room. Today marks the beginning of your journey toward becoming the galaxy's next generation of thinkers, creators, and leaders. As is tradition, we begin with the orientation challenge. The amphitheater's ceiling retracted, revealing the star-filled sky and the Academy's famous 3 moons. A holographic display appeared, showing teams and assignments. You have been divided into 15 teams, Professor Gleeblox continued. Each team must complete a series of cooperative tasks designed to showcase the diversity of talents our students bring to the Academy. The winning team will receive priority class selection for the coming cycle. Jack found his name under Team 7, along with Krill'xor and 6 other species he didn't recognize. As the teams gathered, Jack approached his assigned group, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. Hi, I'm Jack, human. Team 7. The reaction was instantaneous. A floating cloud of sentient gas condensed slightly in what might have been alarm. A 6-legged insectoid backed away so quickly it bumped into a crystalline being who chimed in distress. We know what you are, said a tall, feathered creature with 4 eyes positioned around its head. I am team leader Krill'xor. We have been informed of your presence on our team. The way Krill'xor said informed suggested it had been more like warned. Great, Jack said, forcing a smile. Looking forward to working together. The first challenge was simple enough: navigate an anti-gravity maze while carrying a delicate plasma sphere. The teams had 30 minutes to figure out the best approach. The plasma sphere is attuned to emotional states, Krill'xor explained. It will destabilize if the carrier experiences fear, anger, or excessive excitement. Everyone looked at Jack. What? He asked. Deathworlders are known for their constant state of internal aggression, explained a small, tentacled being. Your adrenaline levels would destabilize the sphere immediately. That's not how human physiology, Jack began, but Krill'xor cut him off. You will navigate the exterior of the maze and provide directional support. Krill'xor will carry the sphere since Terosians are known for their emotional stability. Jack wanted to argue but decided it wasn't worth it. Fine, whatever works. The challenge began, and immediately Team 7 ran into trouble. Krill'xor, despite his supposedly stable emotions, was trembling so badly that the plasma sphere flickered dangerously. The anti-gravity maze shifted constantly, and from his position outside, Jack could see the optimal path changing. "Take the left junction," he called out. "No, your other left." "Silence, Deathworlder," Krill'xor hissed. "Your loud vocalizations are agitating the sphere carrier." Jack bit his tongue as he watched their team fall behind. The sphere grew more unstable with each passing minute. Finally, when Krill'xor took a wrong turn for the third time, Jack couldn't stand it anymore. "Look," he said, approaching the maze entrance. "Let me carry the sphere." "Absolutely not," Krill'xor replied. "Team 7, continue as planned." At that moment, Krill'xor stumbled, and the plasma sphere lurched from his grasp. Without thinking, Jack leaped forward, diving through the anti-gravity field. He moved in a way that would have been impossible in normal gravity, twisting his body to catch the sphere mere centimeters from the ground. The entire amphitheater went silent. Jack floated there, plasma sphere clutched gently in his hands, glowing steadily. "How is it not destabilizing?" someone whispered. Professor Gleeblox drifted closer. "Fascinating. It appears our human student has exceptional emotional control." Or perhaps, the professor's colors shifted thoughtfully. "Perhaps our assumptions about Deathworlder psychology require revision." Jack couldn't help but grin as he navigated the maze with ease, his body adapting instinctively to the changing anti-gravity fields in a way that his teammates couldn't match. When he emerged on the other side, plasma sphere intact, Team 7 had finished first despite their rocky start. Dean Voxnera was waiting at the finish line, 8 eyes narrowed in disapproval. The Dean was an imposing figure nearly 3 meters tall with exoskeletal ridges, and a perpetual scowl etched into a face that resembled a cross between an earth octopus and a praying mantis. "Mr. Harper," the Dean said coldly, "I believed we discussed avoiding displays of Deathworlder physicality." "With all due respect, Dean Voxnera," Jack replied, carefully placing the plasma sphere in its receptacle, "I was simply participating in the team challenge, like any other student." "You are not like any other student," the Dean retorted. "Your presence here is a dangerous experiment that many of us opposed. One misstep, one moment where your predatory instincts emerge, and you will find yourself removed from this academy faster than you can say apex predator." As the Dean walked away, Professor Gleeblox approached. "Impressive performance, Mr. Harper. Your species continues to surprise us." "Not always in good ways, it seems," Jack said, watching the Dean's retreating form. "Dean Voxnera lost family during first contact with another Deathworld species long ago," the professor explained, their colors dimming slightly. "His caution is understandable, if perhaps excessive." Jack nodded, but couldn't help feeling that caution wasn't quite the right word for the Dean's attitude. As the next challenge was announced, he rejoined his team, who were now looking at him with a complex mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. Krill'xor approached him hesitantly. "That was unexpected. Perhaps you should take point on the next challenge." Jack smiled. "Happy to help. After all, we're a team, right?" The insectoid member of their group chittered something that Jack's translator rendered as, "Just please don't eat any of us if we lose." Jack sighed. This was going to be a long orientation. 3 days after orientation, Jack was settling into academy life. The daily routine was manageable: classes in the morning, study groups in the afternoon, and free time in the evening. His classmates still gave him a wide berth, but the outright terror seemed to be fading except for during physical adaptation class, where Jack's ability to perform under simulated high-gravity conditions had renewed everyone's wariness. Even Krill'xor was becoming more comfortable, having only panicked twice when Jack entered their shared living space unexpectedly. Progress, of sorts. Jack was reviewing notes on xenobiochemistry when his tablet chimed with an official academy message. The sender was Dean Voxnera's office. Mr. Harper, your participation is requested in a research study regarding Class 12 Deathworlder adaptation capabilities. This study will provide valuable data for the Galactic Science Council while offering you extra academic credits. Report to Laboratory Complex B, room 217 at 1800 hours today. Participation is voluntary but highly encouraged for provisional students. The word provisional was underlined, a not-so-subtle reminder of humans' tenuous status at the Academy. Jack frowned at the message. Something about it felt off, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Extra credits would certainly help humans had to maintain higher academic standings than other species to keep their places at the Academy, another safety measure that Jack found discriminatory but couldn't do much about. As he headed to his afternoon class, Jack spotted another human in the corridor, a rarity, as there were only 12 human students in the entire Academy. She was shorter than Jack, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the confident stride that all humans seem to develop after growing up on a planet that constantly tried to kill them. "Hey," Jack called out. "Human solidarity moment?" The woman turned, eyebrow raised. "Depends. Are you the guy who caught the plasma sphere in antigrav?" Jack grinned. "News travels fast. When it's about one of us, always." She extended her hand. "Ellie Rodriguez. Xenopolitical Studies." Jack Harper. "Xenobiology." He shook her hand, suddenly realizing how long it had been since he'd had physical contact with another person. Most Academy species avoided touching completely. "So Deathworlder to Deathworlder," Ellie said, lowering her voice. "You get called in for Dean Voxnera's research study yet?" Jack's eyes narrowed. "Just got the message." "You too." 2 days ago. I declined. "Why?" Ellie glanced around before pulling Jack into an alcove. "Because it's not a research study. It's a stress test designed to provoke Deathworlder responses. The Dean has been running these studies since the first humans arrived. One guy got sent home after he broke through a wall during a simulated emergency." "That seems ethically questionable," Jack said. "It is. But the Dean has powerful friends on the board, and humans don't exactly have a lot of advocates here." Ellie crossed her arms. "Look, I'm not telling you what to do, but I've been here a year longer than you. The Dean is looking for excuses to kick humans out. Don't give him one." Jack considered this information. "If I refuse, though, won't that just confirm his bias that humans are uncooperative?" "Better uncooperative than dangerous," Ellie countered. "Trust me on this one." After Ellie left, Jack stood there for several minutes, weighing his options. Finally, he made his decision and messaged back a single word: confirmed. At precisely 1800 hours, Jack arrived at Laboratory Complex B. The hallways were notably empty, with most students at dinner. Room 217 turned out to be a large chamber dominated by a circular platform surrounded by monitoring equipment. Dean Voxnera was waiting, along with 2 research assistants who appeared even more nervous than most beings did around humans. Mr. Harper, punctual, one admirable quality at least. The Dean's mandibles clicked in what Jack had learned to recognize as disapproval. "This study is quite straightforward. You will enter the simulation chamber, and we will present you with various environmental conditions common throughout the galaxy. We will monitor your physiological responses to determine the range of adaptability in human subjects." "That's it?" Jack asked skeptically. "Were you expecting something more nefarious?" The Dean's eyes narrowed. "This is academic research, Mr. Harper. Nothing more." Jack stepped onto the platform, which immediately illuminated. "So what exactly am I supposed to do in there?" "Simply exist," the Dean replied. "The chamber will do the rest. The simulation will last approximately 1 hour, during which you may experience varying conditions. You may terminate the session at any time by saying "end simulation," though of course doing so prematurely would render the data incomplete. A transparent barrier rose around the platform, sealing Jack inside. The air took on a slightly different quality, drier, thinner. We begin with standard Class 4 planetary conditions, the Dean announced. Low oxygen, minimal atmospheric pressure. Nothing a Deathworlder should even notice, correct? Jack took a deep breath. The air was thin, but no worse than high-altitude hiking back on Earth. Piece of cake. Excellent. Let us proceed. 30 minutes into the research study, Jack was starting to think Ellie had been right. The chamber had cycled through various environments, each progressively more challenging than the last. High gravity, low gravity, extreme cold, extreme heat, toxic atmospheric components that made his eyes water and throat burn. Now the chamber was filled with a thick, soupy atmosphere that reminded Jack of Earth's Carboniferous period high oxygen content that made everything feel slightly too vibrant, too intense. Heart rate elevated but still within human norms, one of the research assistants noted. Respiratory adaptation complete within 45 seconds. Subject shows no signs of distress. Dean Vox Nera made a displeased sound. Increase environmental pressure by 15%. Add Class 9 particulate matter. The air grew heavier, and Jack could feel fine particles settling on his skin, irritating his eyes and nostrils. He sneezed violently. Interesting response, the Dean commented. Is that an attack display? Jack wiped his nose. It's a sneeze, completely involuntary. Indeed, your involuntary responses are precisely what concern us, Mr. Harper. The Dean manipulated the controls. Let us try something more stimulating. The chamber temperature plummeted so quickly that Jack's breath fogged in front of him. Frost began forming on the barrier walls. Within seconds, the temperature had dropped below freezing. This exceeds standard testing parameters, one of the assistants said nervously. The protocol calls for gradual transitions. I am aware of the protocol, the Dean replied coldly. But we must understand the limits of Deathworlder physiology under stress. After all, stress is when true nature emerges. Jack's teeth began to chatter, but he forced a smile. Is this supposed to be cold? You should visit Minnesota in January. The Dean's eyes narrowed. Increased sensory input. Pattern sequence delta. Suddenly, the chamber was awash with disorienting lights and sounds, strobing effects combined with high-frequency noises that made Jack wince. Heart rate increasing, the assistant reported. Adrenaline levels rising. Good, the Dean said. Now add the gravitational fluctuations. Jack felt his stomach lurch as the gravity shifted unpredictably, making it impossible to maintain balance. He dropped to one knee, trying to stabilize himself. Subject displaying signs of distress, the assistant noted. Perhaps we should. Continue, the Dean interrupted. Add Class 11 environmental hazards. The chamber floor began to shift beneath Jack's feet, panels sliding open to reveal what appeared to be actual hazards, sharp protrusions, areas that glowed with heat, sections that emitted visible electrical discharges. This was no longer a simulation of environmental conditions. It was an obstacle course designed to provoke a survival response. Dean Vox Nera. A new voice echoed through the laboratory. Professor Gleeblocks had entered, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in patterns that Jack recognized as extreme agitation. What is the meaning of this? This is not approved research protocol. The Dean turned. Professor, this is a classified study authorized by the Security Council. Your presence is not required. I am the head of the Xenobiology Department, and all research involving student subjects requires my approval. The professor's colors pulsed angrily. End this simulation immediately. I am afraid I cannot do that. We are at a critical juncture in understanding Deathworlder stress responses. The Dean turned back to the controls. Increase all parameters by 20%. Inside the chamber, Jack struggled to stay upright as the environment became increasingly hostile. The gravitational shifts were making him nauseated, the strobing lights disorienting, and now actual physical threats were emerging from the chamber floor and walls. This isn't research, Jack called out through gritted teeth. This is provocation. Call it what you will, Mr. Harper. I call it necessary precaution. The Dean adjusted another control. Your kind does not belong among civilized species. It is only a matter of time before your true nature emerges. As the dean spoke, one of the panels beneath Jack's feet suddenly retracted completely, revealing a pit that hadn't been there before. Jack lunged for the edge, but missed, plummeting into darkness. Emergency protocols engaged, the system announced. Simulation containment compromised. Professor Gleeblock surged forward. What have you done? That pit wasn't in the approved chamber design. For the first time, the dean looked genuinely alarmed. That's impossible. I only authorize standard challenge elements. He turned to the control panel, which was now flashing warning lights. System malfunction. The chamber's safety protocols are failing. From below, they heard Jack's voice. Okay, this definitely crossed from research into attempted murder. End simulation. End simulation. The system did not respond. Instead, the entire chamber shuddered, and the transparent barrier began to crack. Evacuate the laboratory. The dean ordered the assistants, who fled immediately. Professor, we must seal this section. Not without retrieving the student, Professor Gleeblock insisted. That's no longer possible. The chamber is destabilizing. If it completely fails, whatever environmental hazards are currently active could escape into the laboratory. The dean was already moving toward the exit. The professor blocked his path. You created this situation, Dean Voxnera. Now you will help resolve it. Before the dean could respond, the control panel sparked violently and went dark. The transparent barrier shattered completely, and warning klaxons began to sound throughout the laboratory. Containment breach, announced the automated system. Emergency lockdown initiated. Heavy security doors slammed shut, trapping the dean and professor inside the laboratory with the malfunctioning chamber. And somewhere in the darkness below, Jack Harper was discovering exactly what kind of research the dean had really planned. Jack landed hard on a surface that gave slightly under his weight. Not deadly, but not pleasant either. The chamber's emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over what appeared to be a sub-level of the testing chamber, one that looked suspiciously like a combat arena. This is definitely not standard Academy testing equipment, Jack muttered, getting to his feet. Above, he could hear muffled shouting and alarms. The pit opening had sealed itself, leaving him trapped in this lower chamber. The walls were lined with what appeared to be observation windows, currently darkened. The floor contained various terrain features, obstacles, barriers, even what looked like defensive positions. Hello? Jack called out. Anyone want to explain what's going on? In response, a section of the wall slid open, and a figure was unceremoniously deposited into the arena. Dean Voxnera himself, looking significantly less imperious than usual. What is the meaning of this? The dean demanded, regaining his footing and brushing himself off. System, recognize administrative override Vox Alpha 79. Nothing happened except for a slight dimming of the emergency lights. I think your system's gone rogue, Jack said, approaching cautiously. What exactly is this place? The dean's eyes swiveled toward Jack, and he backed away instinctively. This was a specialized testing facility for evaluating potentially dangerous species. You mean it's where you try to provoke Deathworlders into violent responses so you can kick them out? Jack translated. Do not presume to understand our safety protocols, human. You have no idea what's at stake. The dean scanned the chamber. The system appears to have malfunctioned completely. The environmental controls are cycling randomly. We need to reach the manual override. As if on cue, the chamber rumbled, and the air began to take on a yellowish tinge. Jack's eyes immediately began to water. Sulfur compounds, the dean said, mandibles clicking in alarm. Highly toxic to my species. Jack quickly removed his academy jacket and held it out. Cover your breathing apparatus. It won't filter everything, but it's better than nothing. The dean hesitated. Look, Jack said impatiently, I know you think I'm just waiting for an opportunity to go full Deathworlder on you, but right now we've got bigger problems. Take the jacket. Reluctantly, The Dean accepted the makeshift filter and wrapped it around his breathing organs. The override is located there. He pointed to a panel on the far side of the chamber. But the environmental hazards will make crossing difficult. Jack surveyed the chamber. The yellowish gas was getting thicker, and he could feel his lungs beginning to protest. In addition, the floor was starting to reconfigure itself, sections rising and falling unpredictably. "We need to move fast," Jack said. "Can you keep up?" The Dean drew himself up indignantly. "I am not some fragile Class 3 species human. I am quite capable of—" The floor beneath the Dean suddenly dropped away, and he would have fallen if Jack hadn't grabbed one of his upper limbs and yanked him to stable ground. "You were saying?" Jack couldn't help the sarcasm. The Dean's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing as they began picking their way across the chamber. The gas was growing thicker, and Jack could feel his eyes burning. He pulled his shirt up over his nose and mouth, but it helped only marginally. "Why build something this dangerous in a school?" Jack asked as they navigated around a section of floor that had become electrified. "It was not designed to be dangerous," the Dean replied, his voice muffled through Jack's jacket. "It was designed to be challenging but controlled. Something has corrupted the system." They were about halfway across when a mechanical whirring sound filled the chamber. Multiple panels opened in the walls, and robotic arms emerged, equipped with what looked like stun weapons. "Defense systems," the Dean said. "They should recognize me. System, recognize Dean Vox Nera, authorization level Alpha." The robotic arms swiveled toward them and began charging their weapons. "I don't think it's listening," Jack said. "Down." He tackled the Dean, pulling them both behind a raised section of floor, just as energy bursts hit where they had been standing. The Dean made a high-pitched sound of alarm. "Unhand me, Deathworlder." "You're welcome for saving your life," Jack replied, peering around their cover. "The override panel is just 30 meters away, but we've got at least 6 of those turrets between us and it." "This is precisely why Deathworlders are dangerous," the Dean hissed. "Your first instinct is physical aggression." Jack stared at him incredulously. "My first instinct was to stop you from getting shot. How is that possibly a bad thing right now?" Before the Dean could reply, the chamber shuddered again, and the gravity suddenly shifted. Instead of pushing them down, it now pulled them toward the far wall. Jack grabbed onto a protruding feature of their cover, while simultaneously catching the Dean's arm as he began to fall. "Hold on," Jack shouted, muscles straining as he supported both their weights against the altered gravity. "What are you doing?" the Dean asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Trying to keep us both alive," Jack shot back. "Now climb up or sideways, or whatever direction makes sense right now." Using Jack's body as an anchor, the Dean managed to secure his own grip. The gravity shift lasted only a few more seconds before normalizing, but it was enough to disorient the defense turrets, which were now firing in random directions. "We need to make a run for it," Jack said. "Those turrets are going to recalibrate soon." The Dean looked at Jack with an unreadable expression. "Why are you helping me? I have not been supportive of your presence at the Academy." Jack shrugged. "Because that's what humans do. We're adaptable, remember? And sometimes adaptation means working together instead of fighting. Now, are you ready to run?" After a moment's hesitation, the Dean nodded. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. They sprinted across the open space, dodging energy blasts and navigating the unstable floor. The sulfurous gas was now so thick that Jack could barely see a few meters ahead. His lungs burned, and his eyes streamed with involuntary tears. They were almost at the override panel when the floor beneath the Dean collapsed again. This time Jack wasn't close enough to grab him immediately. The Dean fell, his lower limbs disappearing into the opening. He scrabbled frantically at the edge but found no purchase. Jack threw himself down, sliding the last few meters on his stomach, and grabbed the Dean's upper limbs just as he was about to fall completely through. The exoskeletal structure made the Dean surprisingly heavy, and Jack felt his shoulders strain with the effort. "I've got you," Jack grunted, pulling steadily. "Just don't struggle." "The panel," the dean gasped. "You must reach the override." "Leave me and—" "Not happening," Jack interrupted. With a supreme effort, he hauled the dean back onto solid ground. "Deathworlder strength, remember? It has to be good for something." Together, they finally reached the override panel. The dean input a complex series of commands with trembling limbs. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groaning sound, the chamber systems began to power down. The gas started to dissipate, the robotic arms retracted, and the floor stabilized. "Emergency shutdown complete," announced a mechanical voice. "Auxiliary systems engaging. Personnel extraction in progress." A section of the wall slid open, revealing a ramp leading upward. Jack helped the dean to his feet. "Can you walk?" The dean straightened himself with as much dignity as he could muster. "I believe so, though I appear to have sustained damage to my lower appendages." "Then lean on me," Jack said, offering his shoulder for support. "That's what teammates do." The dean hesitated only briefly before accepting the help. Together, they made their way up the ramp and towards safety. The Academy board convened an emergency session the following day. Jack sat outside the imposing doors of the council chamber, waiting to be called. Ellie Rodriguez sat beside him, along with Professor Gleeblox, whose colors were cycling through what Jack had learned to recognize as patterns of righteous indignation. "They've been in there for 3 hours, Jack said, checking the time. "Is that normal?" "When it involves potential expulsion of a dean, definitely not normal territory," Ellie replied. "But then again, nothing about this situation is normal." Professor Gleeblox pulsed reassuringly. "You have nothing to fear, Mr. Harper. The evidence is incontrovertible. The dean's research program far exceeded authorized parameters and endangered student safety." The doors finally opened, and a small hovering drone emerged. "The board requests the presence of student Jack Harper and Professor Gleeblox." Inside, the chamber was arranged in a perfect circle, with the board members representing 15 different species seated on elevated platforms. In the center stood Dean Vox Nera, his posture stiff but somehow diminished from his usual imperious stance. Jack noticed he was wearing a medical support brace on his lower limbs. Student Harper began the board chairperson, a being composed of what appeared to be living crystal. "We have reviewed the evidence regarding yesterday's incident. Dean Vox Nera has provided his account. We would now hear yours." Jack stepped forward, feeling the weight of multiple alien gazes upon him. "Chairperson, honored board members. I was invited to participate in what was described as a research study on human adaptability. Instead, I found myself in a facility designed to provoke violent responses through increasingly dangerous stimuli." "And did you respond violently?" asked another board member. "No," Jack replied. "When the system malfunctioned and both the dean and I were in danger, I disabled the malfunctioning equipment and helped evacuate the dean from the chamber when the emergency systems failed." Dean Vox Nera made a sharp clicking sound. This human's actions were reckless and— "The security footage tells a different story, Dean," interrupted a board member with 4 eyes and an elaborate crown of sensory appendages. "We've reviewed it thoroughly. The human showed remarkable restraint despite extreme provocation." Professor Gleeblox floated forward, their colors pulsing in formal patterns. "If I may, Chairperson, my analysis of the Dean's research database shows a systematic pattern of escalation in these experiments. The intent was clear to provoke precisely the stereotype of human violence that the Dean has so vocally warned against." "Is this true, Dean Vox Nera?" asked the chairperson, their crystalline structure refracting light in what Jack interpreted as displeasure. The Dean's mandibles flexed in agitation. "My research was designed to protect this institution. Humans are an unpredictable threat that—" "That saved your life," finished another board member. "According to the medical report, you would have suffered severe injury had student Harper not intervened." Jack looked at the Dean, seeing him clearly for the first time not as a monster, or even as a villain, but as a being driven by fear. Dean Vox-Nera wasn't entirely wrong, Jack said, surprising even himself. The chamber fell silent. Humans do have a capacity for violence, Jack continued. Our history proves that. But what defines us isn't our potential for destruction, but our choices in moments of crisis. The Dean's experiment didn't prove his theory about human nature, it disproved it. The chairperson's crystalline structure shifted, catching the light differently. Well spoken, Student Harper. The board has come to a decision. Dean Vox-Nera will be removed from his position effective immediately. His research privileges are suspended pending further review. The Dean's posture sagged further, his 6 limbs trembling slightly. However, continued the chairperson, in recognition of his previous contributions to this institution, and in the spirit of the understanding that Student Harper has demonstrated, that he will be offered a position in the newly established Department of Interspecies Ethics, where his experiences might be channeled toward more constructive outcomes. 2 weeks later, Jack sat in the Academy's central garden, sketching the unusual flora that surrounded him. He'd become something of a minor celebrity among the student body, though the attention was already beginning to fade a relief to him. "Mind if I join you?" came a voice. Jack looked up to see Ellie holding 2 containers of what passed for coffee at the Academy. "Please," he said, accepting one of the containers. "So," Ellie said, settling beside him, "I hear you agreed to be part of the new ethics committee." Jack nodded. Seemed like the right thing to do. "And I'll be working alongside former Dean Vox-Nera." Ellie's eyes widened. "Seriously? After everything?" "Especially after everything," Jack replied. "He came to see me yesterday, you know. It was awkward, but important." Jack recalled the meeting, the former dean standing stiffly in his doorway, mandibles twitching in what Jack now recognized as nervousness. "I have come to acknowledge," Vox-Nera had said carefully, "that perhaps my methodology was compromised by preconception." It wasn't quite an apology, but for a being like Vox-Nera, it represented a seismic shift in perspective. "The committee needs perspectives from both sides," Jack told Ellie, "and I think we both have a lot to learn from each other." As they sat in companionable silence, Jack watched students of dozens of species moving through the garden. The Academy suddenly felt different to him, not a place where he needed to prove himself as the exception to human nature, but a place where he could simply be himself, both representative of humanity and unique as an individual. "You know," Ellie said thoughtfully, "when I first saw your application to the Academy, I thought you'd either wash out in the first semester or cause some kind of diplomatic incident." Jack laughed. "Well, I sort of did the second one." "No," Ellie replied seriously. "You did something much more important. You showed what humans are really capable of, not just survival or violence, but understanding. Real understanding." In the distance, Jack spotted Professor Gleeblox floating toward them, their colors rippling with what Jack could now identify as excitement. "I think," Jack said, closing his sketchbook, "this might be the beginning of something interesting." Ellie smiled. "I think it already is."